Okay, the next phylum in our world of invertebrates are the Platyhelminthes. Platyhelminthes, not platyhelmets like football helmets, right? It's helminth, and it's helminth, um, but that's sort of the common name for the phylum, Platyhelminth, but officially it's Helminthes. The Platyhelminthes are flatworms. Flatworms are free living and they're all parasitic. So Platyhelminthes are triploblastic. So remember, we just looked at the cnidarians and we just saw two cell layers, either an endoderm and an ectoderm, or an endoderm and a gastroderm. That's diblastic. Triploblastic means three cell layers. So we have an external layer, a middle layer, and an inner layer, right? An ectoderm, a mesoderm, and an endoderm. So that means they develop from three embryonic tissues. Well, there they are, ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. And all the animals that we'll talk about from here on will be triploblastic. So syncytium is the outer layer of the platyhelminth, of the flatworm, and it covers the muscle layer. So it's the epidermal layer. It is the endoderm, essentially. Now, platyhelminthes or flatworms are acoelomates. Now, the coelom, as you know by now, is the gut space, the opening in the gut where vital organs lie. Well, these animals do not have a coelom. Humans do, all mammals do. Flatworms do not. They are acoelomate. Remember what I said last semester? Anytime you put an A or an AN on the front of the word, generally it means without. So a coelomate has a coelom. An acoelomate does not have a coelom. So they do not have a coelom or an inner space surrounding the gut. Okay. An example is a planarian. Now, maybe again in 7th grade life science, you played with planaria. You look at them through a dissecting microscope in a little petri dish full of water, and they swim around. They're a little flatworm. They're free swimming. They have a branched gastrovascular system. And notice I'm not saying digestive system because there is no formal digestive system, so gastrovascular. And planaria and flatworms have both a mouth and an anus. Remember, with the cnidarians, we had one opening, the operculum, which was the mouth, both the mouth and the anus. Anus is maybe not a great word to put in there because it conjures up ideas, pictures in your mind. But that opening, that operculum, is where food comes in and waste material goes out. Here in the worms, we have both a mouth and an anus. So food comes in and waste products go out. So we have an excretory system. Now that has to do with liquid wastes. And flame cells are ciliated. We'll look at those in a minute. They're ciliated. Cilia are the little hair-like structures on the surface of these cells. And their action then is to remove waste from the gut, from the gastrovascular system. All right, nervous system. 2 cerebral ganglia. Notice in parentheses I have brain with a question mark. In some sources you'll read, or if you watch a video, it'll say brain. But it's not a brain as you and I know brains. It's not a sophisticated thinking, planning brain like higher animals have. But it's a collection of nerve cells. A collection of nerve cells we call a ganglion. There are 2 of them, so plural is ganglia. And we call them cerebral ganglia because they're in the area that when you look at a worm, if you say, okay, this is the tail end and this is the head end, these ganglia are at the head end, the cerebral end. So we're evolutionarily, because we didn't have any kind of quote-unquote brain in the cnidarian. So evolutionarily, we're getting more sophisticated, right? Here we're getting collections of nerve cells, which that's all your brain is, a big collection of nerve cells, but we have collections of nerve cells in one area of the animal, in what we call the head area or the cerebral area of the animal. So right now we're starting to, evolutionarily, we're starting to develop what will eventually become a brain in your head. All right, a long description of too much information maybe, right, at this point. I don't think so, but anyway. So, and then from the ganglia are two nerve cords, lateral because they're on the side of the animal. So you have one going down the left side, one going down the right side. There is no circulatory system and there is no respiratory system. These animals just exchange respiratory gases just through their skin. Reproduction, on the reproduction side, these animals are monoecious and fertilization occurs inside. So here's a planarian. Here's the animal that maybe you played around with in 7th grade life science. Okay, so here is the intestine. This is like the gastrovascular area. This is called the pharynx, just like you have a pharynx. And this opening at the back is both the mouth and the anus. So food comes in there and waste products go out there. Here we see up in the front these little things that look like eyeballs. Those are eye spots. They just sense light. And that's one of the things that in general biology on campus in the lab that we play around with. We have a petri dish full of planaria, and you can shade one side of the dish. See, the planaria can sense light, and so they swim to the dark side. They swim to the dark side, Luke. Swim to the dark side. Okay, so they can sense light. They're not eyes. That's what we call them, eye spots. They're not eyes as such. We know eyes, but they do sense light. And underneath there, you see the cerebral ganglia. So we have two bundles of nerve cells called ganglia in the head region, even though this is the mouth down here, but right, doesn't it look like the tail here and the head here? So in the head region, in the cerebral area, we have these two bundles of nerve cells, these two ganglia, which will evolutionarily eventually develop into a brain. That's why I put brain in parentheses in quotation marks with a question mark, because it's not really a brain, but some people call it a brain. And then you have, here's one nerve cord going all the way back. Here's the other nerve cord going all the way back. One nerve cord on either side. Lateral nerve cords, we call them. There is your flame cell in all of its glory, the cilia to capture food items as they come in, and that's going to lead you to the not digestive tract, but the intestine, and eventually excretion. Again, I don't want you to get all hung up on the details of these illustrations. It's just to show you and to point out these various features to hopefully impress upon you how amazing even these simple animals are. Okay, so within the flatworms, the Platyhelminthes, we have a class called the Cestoda. Now, cestodes are tapeworms, and tapeworms, obviously, as you know, are parasitic, and they live in livestock. They can live in fish as well. For those of you who enjoy sushi, keep that in mind. And, of course, they can take up residence in humans. So the Tinea species, that's the SPP, just species, because there's a number of different species of Tinea That's the genus name, Tinea, are common parasites of cows and pigs. Now, the tapeworm has a head end, and that head is called the scolex. I'll show you the picture. It's going to freak you out. The scolex has suckers and little barbs that then the worm uses to attach to the intestinal lining of the animal. Now, proglottids are the segments. These are segmented, but not segmented worms, not like earthworms. But they're the proglottids are the body segments, and each body segment contains both male and female gonads. So fertilization obviously occurs within a proglottid or between proglottids. Now, mature proglottids break off and they get discharged in feces. So if you have a cow that has a tapeworm, these mature proglottids, now mature meaning they're fertilized, break off, they get discharged in the feces, and eventually they get spread around in the field, and another cow comes along and eats grass that has some of these proglottids on it, and now that cow becomes infected with a tapeworm. So here we go. I'm thinking ahead. Livestock eat proglottids, right? The eggs hatch, and the juvenile worms form cysts in muscle tissue. Now, what happens here is the cysts, and this especially happens in pigs, but the cysts, or juvenile tapeworms, are bury themselves or bore themselves into the muscle tissue. And then humans come along, and we harvest the cows, and we harvest the pigs, and we cut them up, and we fry them up, and then we eat them. And if that meat is not cooked well enough, because you have to cook it well enough to kill the juvenile worms, the larval worms, if you do not cook the meat at a high enough temperature, the worms survive and you eat the meat, and now you are infected, and now you will get a tapeworm. That's how it works. So humans eat uncooked. Some people eat uncooked meat, and that's especially true of fish, or undercooked meat. If you like your beef, what do they call it? Not well done, medium done. I call it undone. Anyway, I'm not a meat eater, so I'm not familiar with it. I just know well done. My dad always said the meat has to be well done, so he wanted it crispy. Anyway, undercooked meat. When you eat undercooked meat or uncooked meat like fish, you ingest the cysts, and then the worms grow into maturity in your small intestine, and they're going to look like this. Da-na-na-na. Tapeworms can grow, to meters long. Your small intestine is meters long, so a tapeworm can grow that long. We don't really see it. Here's the scolex, and you don't see it clearly. I'll show you a close-up in a minute, but you can see these sort of almost look like shingles, right? These little individual little slats, those are proglottids. The immature proglottids, they form off of the head, and as you go down, they become mature. And so when you get down to the end, there's actually a couple of tapeworms there, but when you get down to the end, these are mature proglottids. That means they're fertilized, ready to go. The animal poops them out. Another animal comes along and eats them. Juvenile worms bore into the meat. You eat the undercooked meat. Now you're infected. Okay, so there you go. These poor ladies have yanked out this tapeworm. Look at it. Look how long. This is all one worm. And it just loops and 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 loops. It's broken there, but it's all one worm. So it's many, many meters in length. And there is the horrendous picture that I told you I was going to show you. This is the scolex of a tapeworm. Very much up close. You can see the suckers here. There's 4 of them. And then you can see the little barbs here. So the animal digs into the intestinal lining with these little barbs and these suckers, and now you're infected. I mean, we can get rid of tapeworms with antibiotics, but the point is they are parasitic, and now they'll feed off of you. Tapeworm life cycle. Okay, so here it is, just what I explained a little bit earlier. Here is your, well, let's start back here, I guess. Number one. These are different species of tinea, cattle tinea and pig tinea. Become infected by ingesting vegetation contaminated by proglottids, by eggs or gravid proglottids, all right? Now, the eggs hatch and the little larval worms bore into the muscle of that animal. Now, humans come along by eating either the raw meat or the undercooked meat, right? And then, so we're eating those little larval worms, and those little larval worms now can grow into adult tapeworms with their little scoliosis, and they attach to your small intestine, and they grow many meters long. And see, there you see a proglottid breaking off. You poop it out. It goes into, I mean, nobody comes along and eats where you pooped unless you pooped outside. But the point here is, in the case of animals, these eggs or gravid proglottids are pooped out onto the ground, and somebody else comes along and ingests the vegetation, and the whole cycle starts over again. So proglottids, those are the segments here where the eggs are held. Remember, eggs are fertilized. These eggs are fertilized. The eggs are ingested by livestock. The eggs hatch into these larval worms. The larval worms are born to the muscle and form these cysts. Humans eat undercooked meat, and they ingest the cysts, and now the humans end up with proglottids, with a tapeworm. That's how it works. That's how tapeworms survive and propagate their species. Let's go to the video, Flatworm Facts by Animal Fact Files. See you on the other side. So we have a quick check here, which of the following statements about flatworms is true. Platyhelminthes. Check all that apply. Humans can get tapeworms by eating raw fish. Platyhelminthes are triploblastic. Flatworms have a coelom. Proglottids contain both male and female gonads. And juvenile tapeworms form cysts in muscle tissue. I think that's the last one. One at a time. Humans can get tapeworms by eating raw fish, okay? There are species of flatworms that infect fish. Now, if you go and you end up, if you enjoy sushi, I'm not telling you not to eat sushi, but if you enjoy sushi, just be aware if you go to some place, there may be some places out there that do not carry high quality fish, and you may end up ingesting tapeworm cysts when you have your sushi. So just be aware of that, okay? As in fact, in the 21st century, as sushi has become more and more popular with the public around the world, the cases of tapeworm infestation to humans has dramatically increased because some of those fish are infected. You eat raw fish, you get infected. No, your stomach acid does not kill these worms. Platyhelminthes are triploblastic. Remember, ectoderm, mesoderm, endoderm, 3 embryonic tissue layers. So that's true. Oh, I checked these off, right? Oh, there's the last one. Flatworms have a closed circulatory system. Okay. Tapeworms get their nutrients via diffusion from the host. Okay, so humans can get tapeworms from eating raw fish. Platyhelminthes are triploblastic. Now, flatworms have a coelom. Now, remember, a coelom is that gut space. So flatworms do not have a coelom. They are acoelomates. So that's not true. Proglottids contain both male and female gonads. Remember, they can fertilize within a proglottid or fertilize between proglottids. Juvenile tapeworms form cysts in muscle tissue. We know that's true. Flatworms have a closed circulatory system. No, they don't have any circulatory system. And tapeworms do get their nutrients via diffusion from the host. Right? So you have a tapeworm. What you eat is feeding the tapeworm. Preguntas? Any questions?